What's going on, Cleveland? I know it's early. Let's make some noise up in here. Woo! How's everyone doing this morning? Excellent. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here in the land. It's my first time in Cleveland. It's actually my first time in Ohio as well, so really good to be here with all of you. Now, before I jump right into it, because the next 30 minutes and then followed by the 30 minutes after that are going to be really exciting and memorable, I want to first invite all of you to add me on social media. So pull out your phones, go to Twitter, go to Instagram. You can add me at CarlosGill83. I also have my phone number here on the screen. You can send me a text, 646-846-1922. Because what I'm going to speak to you about over the next 30 minutes or so, it's really going to help you humanize your brand. It's going to give you some insight into where marketing is headed. But there's a reason why I have these assets known as a social media account here on the screen, including my phone number. It's because I want us to be connected. I want us to be in touch with each other. After this conference, after I jump off stage and you read my new book, The End of Marketing, I want you to be able to get in touch with me directly. And you see, that's the relationship that we should all aspire to have with our customers today. So what you're going to hear me speak about is how to really humanize your brand in this new age of social media and AI. Now, I want to encourage you to tweet. So if you learn something exciting and provocative, not only through my talk, but also through the other speakers that are going to be presenting to you throughout the day, make sure that you tweet that out. Make sure you tag those speakers as well. Now, let's talk about the end of marketing and what really led me to write this book. First of all, I'm really excited that this conference and all of you are the first ones to ever get a copy of The End of Marketing. Woo! I'm really excited about this. So, first of all, thank you so much to the team here at JMC Brands that put together this amazing event, Joe, Roy, the whole staff, because it's an honor to be able to not only be here and speak to all of you, but this cohort that's going to walk away from this talk is going to be the first ones to actually read and review The End of Marketing. Now let's talk about why I wrote this book. First of all, I've worked in social media marketing at a corporate level for the last 10 years before going out on my own. I've had the privilege of working at companies like LinkedIn. You're going to hear from Ty Heath here in a little bit. I've had the honor of leading and starting social media at organizations like Winn-Dixie and Save-A-Lot. And here's what I will tell you about corporate social media marketing. It's fragmented. It's disconnected. Most professionals that have the word marketer or marketing in their job title aren't actually marketers at all. They're order takers. And what I mean by this, for those of you that work on the brand side, or even if you work on the agency side, you can relate to this. How many of you are doing your jobs every single day predicated based on your next campaign that's rolling out, right? A lot of marketers are just pressing buttons. They're creating social media plans based on a campaign. And what they're really missing out is the opportunity that exists, which is to build relationships at scale. So when I sat down and wrote this book, I said to myself, you know, I've worked for these really powerful companies. I've been fortunate to manage multi-million-dollar ad budgets, but I'm also a consumer. At the end of the day, I'm a content creator. And I realized that as an individual, I actually have more influence and power than the brands that I work for, because the brands I work for, every time they show up on the scene, are doing what? They're selling. They're pushing out content. So what the end of marketing really is, ladies and gentlemen, is a framework for how to future-proof your business and your career going forward. Now, I want to start off by saying, marketers, may we rebrand in peace. And what I mean by this statement is going forward over the next 10 years, in order to stay in business and stay digitally relevant, we're going to have to get away from making our logos, our company logos, the heroes and the faces of our brands. And I know it's really difficult, but what you're going to see, not just throughout this presentation, but by reading The End of Marketing, what you're going to learn and walk away from is that the individuals that have the most power today online aren't your billion-dollar corporations. They're individuals. They're employees. They're every single person in this room that has influence, the ability to influence even if it's one person. You see, a lot of individuals think that influence is predicated based on followers, and it's not. I call bullshit on that. What influence really means is that you can get someone to take an action. Now, by show of hands, does anyone in this room enjoy being sold to? Look around. Not a single person. Does anyone in this room wake up in the morning and with excitement grab their iPhone and go to Facebook to see what their favorite brand of all time posted? I know I don't. I'm not seeing any hands going up here in Cleveland. I know you guys don't either. So think about that for a moment. Because as marketers, we are trying to convince the masses to go every single day to see what we're posting, to check in, to engage with us, to share, to comment. But we ourselves don't eat our own dog food, which is why going forward, what your strategy needs to be is how to sell less and engage more. What do I mean by that? Well, let's break that down. Going forward, your objective needs to be, how do I create more relationships one-to-one with my customers, as opposed to every single time I show up in their newsfeed, I'm trying to drive them to my blog, drive them to my website, take an action, buy something, see a campaign. Because all of you here just answered the question that I pose to my clients, to prospects, to other marketers every single day. Why are you on social media if you're not socializing? Now, let's address the obvious. The golden age of marketing is dead. Marketing as we know it is dead. And in order to survive what's coming, which is the AI apocalypse, you need to adapt and evolve, or you're gonna die. Literally, your brand, digitally speaking, will no longer exist. Because here's what you have to look forward to. When I say that there's an AI apocalypse coming, let me break this down for you succinctly. Right now, we are at the early stages of chatbots replacing community managers. I see some heads nodding. It's gonna happen. And what's going to happen over the next decade is as companies, as marketing budgets start to shrink, and as companies start to look at human capital as a negative on their balance sheet, this is real talk now, as they start to look at marketers as a loss for the organization, someone somewhere at the top is gonna say, you know what, we have this whole thing called AI that I keep seeing the commercials, IBM Watson, you've probably seen those. What can we do to optimize our community management? What can we do to take all the content that we've written over the last 10 years on platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and how can we be smarter around how we market? Well, guess what the role of a marketer will then become? You'll become a data scientist. You'll become a bot programmer. And eventually, you will program yourself out of a job. So some of you are probably sitting there in your seat saying, holy shit, this is pretty serious. You're right. And this was really the motivation for me, first and foremost, why I wrote the book, The End of Marketing. Because there's one thing, I've played around with AI and bots, there's one thing that a bot cannot do, and that's build a relationship with you directly, because let's face it, as human beings, we are attracted and connected to other humans. A bot is just that. It's a process. It's a computer. It's not a real person. Now, here's what's scary. Right now, you have AI influencers like Lil Miquela. This girl behind me is not a 19-year-old influencer. She's actually an AI-created bot. Lil Miquela has millions of followers, over 1.6 million on Instagram. She's verified. You can see her at Coachella. You can see her collaborating with all the hot artists right now in the music industry. She does brand collaborations. So for all of you influencers out there, y'all are fucked. I just want to say it. Because the reality is that going forward, brands like, we're already seeing it happen. Brands like KFC are creating their own CGI animated influencers. So what happens when the brand realizes, well, we don't need people anymore. We can just create it ourselves. We can own the persona. We can take all the data that Nielsen gives us, and now we know that if we're Target, we are trying to appeal to a 43-year-old mom of 3. And we can create that image so every single time someone pulls up on our Instagram account, they're not seeing that Tide is on sale, but they're seeing an actual person that they can relate to without ever having to pay an influencer. That is where we're headed. Now, I'm here to help you future-proof your job and your career because I like you, because I want to see everyone here succeed, including myself. I've committed the last 10 years to building a career in this industry while also creating a brand for myself. Do you understand the power in branding? Because when you have a brand, for yourself, and let me just say this. I get asked all the time, Carlos, how do you start a personal brand? Every single person in this room has a personal brand. Every single one of you. Now, there's different levels of influence. There's different levels of reach that we all have. But we all have value. But here's the good part. When you develop your brand and grow your brand, all of a sudden you find that there's an abundance of opportunities. And going forward, in order for you to not just future-proof the business that you're in right now, but your career, I really urge you to start focusing on what I like to refer to as massaging your brand, growing your brand, connecting with people that's going to help amplify your reach and your brand. And if you do that successfully by tapping into platforms like LinkedIn, by going to events like this, and every single person you connect with in person, you connect with online, and then you take that conversation or that connection online into actually having real conversations, that's relationship building. That in itself is what every single brand that I come across on social media misses the mark on, because they're thinking of relationships as transactional as opposed to transactions of relationship building. Now, going forward, every brand will need real people to depend on as the faces of their brand. We're seeing this happen right now as influencer marketing continues to grow. What influencer marketing really is, and I write about this in the marketing, is a Band-Aid. It's a temporary Band-Aid to cover up a lack of engagement. So what most brands do, I know you get it because I see my man here smiling. What most brands do is this. They look at their numbers and they say, oh shit, we're getting very little engagement on social media. I have to justify my salary to my boss. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go out, I'm going to find 3, 4, 5 influencers. I got this pile of cash, i.e. budget, and I'm going to take this pile of cash, I'm going to pay a few influencers, they're going to get my product, they're going to tweet it out, life's good for that quarter when you're able to turn up in the boardroom and show your executives or your boss that your numbers look good. But here's what happens. It's not sustainable at all. Because what you're doing is you're just putting on this temporary Band-Aid, you're getting all excited, but then what happens? Your audience that you thought existed isn't actually paying attention to you. They really don't care about your brand. They just care that for a very temporary moment in time, you had organic reach that normally you have to pay for. So the reality is that people are brands, people buy from people, people trust people, and people want to be engaged. They don't want to be sold to. All of you answered the question before. Not a single person in this auditorium goes on social media to be sold to. I know I don't. But you want to know how marketing really is done today through people? I'll give you an example. My man here in the room, raise your hand. He's a barber. I went to his barber shop yesterday. What do? I had a great experience in person. I shared that experience online. The owner of the barber shop shared my content. This gentleman here came to the conference. That's relationship building. And the good news is that you can do this every single day. But realizing that people are brands, you have a variety of influencers that exist. You have motivational speakers. You have business personalities. You've probably seen some of these individuals in your newsfeed before. These individuals are brands. These individuals are taking reach away from corporations. You know, one of my favorite influencers, if you will, is DJ Khaled. First of all, I'm from South Florida. I'm from Miami, just like him. People kind of tell me that we somewhat resemble each other, although I don't get it. I think it might just be the haircut. But the reality is that DJ Khaled is one of the most watched individuals online today. And the reason why DJ Khaled is watched and embraced and beloved isn't because he's the most eloquent speaker on social media, but because he's entertaining, he's real. And that's what people want. People don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. But it starts with knowing your audience. If you don't know who you're marketing to, you're going to fail. That's period. You know, this photo here that you see on the screen behind me represents the diversity of audiences that occurs in households today. You have dad that's all about LinkedIn, networking, right? You have mom that's taking to Facebook to see what the other wives in the neighborhood are posting. You have the son that's going to YouTube to see what his favorite personality is sharing on his daily vlog. You have a little girl that's going on TikTok. So it's really important that you understand one thing that I'm about to say, you want to write this down. Social media can be a big waste of time if you're not strategic. If you are taking to every single social network and posting content for the sake of getting reach or having eyeballs on your content, but yet people aren't converting, they're not becoming customers, then you're wasting your time very, very fast. So let me be the first to tell you, you don't need to be on every social network. You don't need to be on TikTok just because right now you have 13-year-old kids flocking to TikTok to make music videos. You don't need to be on Facebook if you're getting very little reach and engagement. So you should specifically focus on being on the platforms where your audience lives and where you can get the biggest reach. Now, 2, who holds influence over your intended audience? And this is really important here, because I'm not talking about influencers for the purpose of influencer marketing. I'm talking about who can actually influence who you're trying to reach. And that's employees, that's existing customers, that's your CEO, it's your C-suite. Those are real influencers. You know, I laugh when someone says to me, well, our brand doesn't nearly have the reach of XYZ insert influencer here. And I tell them, but look at your CEO. Your CEO is getting mentioned in Forbes and Inc. and all these publications. That's an influencer right there. If you're not creating content around them, that's a missed opportunity. You know, the next point is this Tinder generation that we're in. You need to understand that today's consumer is reacting to what looks good, what sounds good, what's visually appealing. So if the first thing that someone sees when you step on the scene is what's on sale, or click here to go to our latest blog post, because you haven't done a good enough job building a rapport with them, you know what's going to happen? These customers are going to keep swiping through their feed, just like Tinder. And for those of you that don't know what Tinder is, it's a dating app. One of the most shallow dating apps that exist, because people are reacting to what perceivably looks good for them. And guess what? Marketing is no different. The reality is that this is you right now. Have any of you in this room seen Castaway? It's one of my favorite movies. You'll see in the book, I'm a big Tom Hanks fan. So my analogy to the world of social media marketing today is that we are all stranded in this giant digital ocean. And guess what? In this giant digital ocean, we are struggling to stay relevant. Wilson, the volleyball in Castaway, is what we perceive to be our audience. But guess what? The audience isn't paying attention. The audience isn't speaking back to us. You know, I get humor out of this when I meet a brand. They say, you know, Carlos, we have 30 million followers on Facebook, but we're getting very little engagement. Can you and your company work with us on that? The reality is this. You don't have 30 million followers. Like any one of you in this room, take the number of followers that you have on social media, you don't have that number of people that are actually paying attention to what you say when you appear in their newsfeed. You have 1% or less. Now, here's where I challenge you. Whoever that 1% or less is, start building relationships with them. Because if you have, let's say, 100,000 fans, but 1% of that, or 1,000 people actually give a shit that you exist, that's power in numbers. In fact, if I were to take every single person in this room right now and get all of you to tweet out a copy, the front page of the End of Marketing, I would be happy, because that's a lot of people. So I say this to put in perspective that you don't need to have the biggest following on social media, but what you should have is a quality following, even if it's 5 people. Now, let's step away from marketing for a moment, and let's talk about moments. Because moments in time are precious. It seems like every single week, there's something that the public is speaking about, right? In a little bit, you're going to be seeing Ja Rule here on stage with me. Earlier this year, it seemed like for weeks, all you would hear about on social media was Fyre Festival. And then you know what? Then the public moves on to the next. Over the last couple of weeks, the public's been speaking about chicken sandwiches. The Popeyes chicken sandwich phenomenon of 2019. We're talking about fucking chicken sandwiches in almost 2020? We're talking about Antonio Brown? Like, it's moments, not marketing. How many of you participated a few years ago in the Ice Bucket Challenge? How many of you either saw or participated in the Shiggy Challenge or the Face App Challenge? Okay? I guarantee you, for those of you that didn't raise your hand, at some point in time, you went in your news feed and you saw someone changing their face to a very old version of themselves, or you've seen people participating in these challenges. Guess what these challenges are? They're moments in time for you to integrate your brand into a conversation that's already happening. You see, every marketer struggles with staying relevant and getting engagement. And I can insert KPI here. But the reality is that you already have access to a community that exists. Think of social networks as almost like search engines. It's like Google, right? I was actually saying this to my man yesterday who's a barber. And that's what happens when you sit in the front row, by the way. The speaker picks on you. So what I was saying to him is, as a barber, forget posting content every single day, telling people to come get haircuts with you. Instead, go on Instagram and see every single person that's posting content at the Brown Stadium. Look at every single person that's posting content at the surrounding hotels around your barbershop, and then send them messages directly, just introducing yourself. That's the opportunity that we all have. Now, the reality is that social media, ladies and gentlemen, is the wild, wild west. There's no rules. There's no governing body that tells you this is how you have to conduct yourself. This is how you have to use it. Any pro wrestling fans here in the building? Yeah? I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. My favorite chapter in the end of marketing is chapter 3, how to be savage as fuck like Randy. And it pays homage to the late, great Randy Savage. Because my belief for every single marketing organization going forward is that you have to become a digital savage if you want to stay relevant. In order to win this game, you need to stop being a marketer, think more like a fan, and ladies and gentlemen, be more like a savage. And I'm going to give you an example of that. One of my favorite brands on social media is Chick-fil-A. I'm sorry, it's Wendy's. One of my favorite chicken sandwiches is actually Chick-fil-A. But one of my favorite brands is Wendy's. And you know why? Because Wendy's is savage as fuck. They don't care who they offend. They don't care whose feelings they hurt. They get attention. Because you see, attention's the commodity that we're all chasing. Like, let that register for a moment. We think that we're trying to achieve a KPI in reach, engagement, conversions. What we're really trying to do is gain attention. So how do you get someone's attention? It's by speaking like they speak. It's knowing your audience. So when I look at an example like this here on the screen and Chick-fil-A tweets out, is there anything better than enjoying one of our spicy chicken sandwiches on a Friday afternoon? Yeah, Wendy swoops in and says, enjoying one of ours on a Sunday. Ouch, that hurts. Then you look at customers. You see, part of the game is actually showing up and being present. The other part of the social media game is actually listening to what's being said. So when you listen to what's being said, now you can actually form conversations at scale. So you have this customer here that tweets out, I want to go on a date with Wendy's and take them to a real burger joint, which is Burger King. So you would think that this conversation would just end here, right? Because Wendy's isn't going to swoop in and acknowledge your competition. Well, guess what? Burger King, kudos to them, swoops in and says, treat her like the princess she deserves to be, okay? Funny, clever. And then what's Wendy's say? If you're looking for a princess, you might want to let it go. Not interested in the frozen beef kingdom. Ouch. It's digital jabs. That's being a digital savage, ladies and gentlemen. That's not giving a fuck and being unapologetic that right now there are people speaking about you, your competition, and the services that you sell right now. I would challenge you to go to Instagram and run a hashtag search for the name of your company. And you're going to be surprised by what you find. And that's people every single day, if they're not tweeting or posting content about your company, guess what? They're posting content related to what you do. And the biggest difference between the brands that get it and the brands that don't is the brands that get it, they're showing up to the party. The brands that don't get it, they're not even walking in through the front door. They're ignoring it. And I'll share an example with you. In the time that I led social media at Winn-Dixie, which is one of the largest supermarket chains in the US, I started social media there in 2012. I moved on to Save A Lot in 2014. Every single day, and actually went through this exercise as I wrote them to marketing. Every single day, we would use Sprinkler or whatever tool we were using back then to monitor what was being said about Winn-Dixie and about Publix. Every single day, there was trends that we would just see that would pop up on our radar. People loved Publix, they hated Winn-Dixie. People loved Winn-Dixie, they hated Publix. So I'd go to my CMO and I'd say, look, Mary, we have all these people that are mentioning our brand, along with our biggest competitor in market. We should engage with them. And she said, you know what, Carlos? We don't want to poke the bear, which is one of the silliest things I've ever heard a chief marketing officer say. Because when you look at the Wendy's model, again, it's the digital wild, wild west. There's no rules. So the good news, ladies and gentlemen, if there's like one key takeaway that you get from this talk, is if you start using social media to actually do more socializing, and it begins by paying attention to what's being said, you'll actually be able to get value from it. You'll be able to get business from it. It's not gonna happen overnight, but just letting your customers or prospects or customers of your competition know that you exist is valuable. So here's my recommendation if you really want to take digital savagery to the next level. Whatever company it is that you represent, how many of you use social media in your business, by the way? Almost all of you? Excellent. Whatever company you represent, go to your competition's Facebook page. Hear me out. Go to your competition's Facebook page and read their reviews. I guarantee you that you will come across negative reviews on your competition's Facebook page. You know what I want you to do? Comment. Thank you. You get it, my man. Comment. I know some of you are probably saying right now, oh, we would never do that. We're a conservative company. Well, guess what? I hope your competition does it to you. Because in this wild, wild west digital ecosystem that we're in, there's no rules, there's no regulations, like I said before. And if you want to win the game, then you've got to be the biggest digital savage that exists in the room. Not just commenting on reviews of your competition, but Facebook ads. How many times have you gone on Facebook and you see an ad from a competitor in your newsfeed? I'm sure all of you at some point, when you really stop and think about it, you have. You know why? Because that competitor is actually targeting people that buy from your brand. They're doing Facebook ad buying as digital savages, right? But you know what also happens? The ad agencies that are doing $1 million buys on Facebook, they're not taking the time to even see that people are commenting on these ads. So you know what my recommendation to all of you is, ladies and gentlemen? The next time that you see an ad in your newsfeed from your competition, comment on that ad as your brand. Start reading the comments and start engaging with those individuals. Not all of you are going to do this, I realize that. But the ones that do, the ones that understand what I'm saying here and go do it, you're going to reap the benefits. So going back to, and I'll get to your question when I'm done here, going back to social listening, the greatest opportunity that we have that exists is the fact that we have access right now to platforms that over the last decade have been curating data. So many people over the last year have been up in arms about Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and data privacy and all this. And let me tell you, I, as a marketer, love the fact that I have access to people's data. And you should too. Because that's what social networks really are. I call them search engines because that's how they operate. If you're actually using social media to listen and engage and form a relationship, that's where you're going to build advocacy. That's where you're going to find influencers in the deep. Because creating your own influencers is really what you should be striving to do as opposed to renting influencers. So going forward, once you leave this conference, do an analysis within your own organization. Who are the influencers within our own company? Again, I'm not talking about social media followers. I'm talking about individuals in your organization right now that are passionate about social media. Who are they? Who are the guys, girls, kids, millennials, Gen Zers right now that work at your company that live by their Snapchat account and Instagram account? Whoever they are, recruit them, sign them up to start being the faces of your brand. That's one. Two, as you're using social listening, to see who's speaking about your brand, and you're developing relationships, hopefully, with your customers, then start identifying who within this subset of consumer can potentially be an influencer for our brand. So my recommendation to all of you is to spend more time having conversations than posting content. You see, so many marketers think that content is king. How many of you have heard that before? Okay, guess what? I call bullshit on that. Content is not king. You know what content is? It's noise. Content annoys me because we're already in a noisy digital ecosystem where everyone is shouting from the rooftops, come buy from me, come see my brand, come follow me, I'm so great. Consumers, all of us in this room, we've learned how to weed out the ads we don't want to be sold to. So content without community is just noise on technology. Community, on the other hand, is powerful because when you focus on building up a community, even if it's 1, 5, 10 people, however the number is, once you start focusing on building a community, that becomes the extension of your marketing team. And let's talk about the role of the marketer going forward, because I realize it. The end of marketing, it's a polarizing title, topic. It's going to probably irk some legacy marketers, but that's by design. Because in order to stay afloat and stay relevant, you need to understand where the shift is going. I've given you a little bit of insight of that here this morning with the role that AI, specifically through AI influencers, is going to play. But what role will you play going forward? Well, going forward, marketers, they will be data analysts. And what I mean by that is having a deep understanding of all these numbers that we see. What does that mean? What do impressions mean? What do conversions mean? What does reach mean? AI program developers. We will be tasked over the next few years with programming the AI that will eventually replace our jobs as marketers, which is why it's important that to future-proof your brand, you start looking at yourself as a brand spokesperson. You start making your face and your voice be at the forefront of what you do. So I get it. We're all busy with our day jobs. We want to be on LinkedIn more. We want to be on Instagram more. You need to start doing that now. But also, it's knowing the house rules. You know, I often refer to these social networks as casinos, because they are. You know, you swipe your credit card on Facebook and you roll the dice and hope for the best result. You have to spend money and make money. You have to growth hack the algorithms in order to get people to pay attention. So I'm going to share with you what the biggest growth hack really is, and that's keeping your audience on the platform where you're speaking to them on. The way these social networks work today, ladies and gentlemen, is they're digital advertising platforms. LinkedIn wants my ad budget. Facebook wants my ad budget. Google/YouTube wants my ad budget. So they're not going to let me build my business for free underneath their roof. You understand how that works? And that's why you have low engagement today, because all of us are hoping for the best result organically, which is what? Clicks, conversions, customers, sales, without realizing how the game truly is designed to work. For all of us, these social networks are social networks. For the people behind the scenes that run the social networks, they're advertising platforms. So I'm going to leave you guys on this note. A great philosopher by the name of Jay-Z once said, "Men lie, women lie, numbers don't." You have the greatest opportunity in front of you right now, and that's access to people. You have over 2 billion people on Facebook, over 600 million members on LinkedIn, over 1 billion active users on Instagram. These are real numbers. But ladies and gentlemen, what you will realize very quickly as you open up that book in front of you is that the brands today, the Nikes, the Coca-Colas, the Walmarts, they don't have the power. They have trillions and billions of dollars, but they don't have the power that you do, and you do, and you do. But it's up to us to activate and exercise that power, and it starts from looking within your organization, looking at your customer base, building relationships, and also humanizing your brand. So with that, I want to thank all of you for your time this morning. Thank you very much. So here's what's going to happen. The next 30 minutes or so is going to be really fun, because in just a moment, Here on the stage is going to join me an individual that I've personally come to know over the last year or so. Like many of you, I've had the privilege of seeing his story play out, but here's what I'll tell you about social media. We tend to judge individuals based on what we see on the outside without really vetting and getting to know people based on what's on the inside. So with that, I want to introduce you to an individual that really needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me bring out on the stage Mr. Ja Rule.